Now, for me as a neurobiologist who studies decision making, the fact that's emerged in studies of the way people make decisions in the last 15 or 20 years is that we have lots of different brain systems for making decisions. Some are specialized for really cognitive, deliberative things that you have to think about. Some are specialized for things that you've learned that you become really practiced at. And we also know that as you practice any act, it switches from being very brain intensive and involving all the front of your head and brain on fire kind of activity to being really, really automatic, requiring less energy, being what we think of as a habit. Now that's a stylized fact in brain science. And so the question I want to ask you, because you have not just played for all those years, but watched and commented and thought about the way athletes work for years and years and years, do people who train athletes and watch athletes and athletes themselves think of themselves as switching when they're learning to do something from a really deliberative way of doing it to a really automatic way of doing it?
Excuse me, you mean as far as playing the game?
Yeah, like when you're learning a new play, or you're teaching a new play to a team. The first time they're doing it, I assume everybody's thinking really hard about what their job is, and they probably do it really slowly, and they probably, I'm betting, don't do a very good job of it. And at some point, I'm wondering, they must get to a place where it's just completely automatic.
Yeah, initially when you said it, we put it in a new play, right? So, you kind of walk through. It's more of a walkthrough. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes Red Holtzman would let us put in play, so Bill Bradley would say, let's try this play. So we kind of walk through it, and then we'll go through full speed. Because essentially basketball is basketball. Eventually it's about passing, dribbling, shooting. Mm-hmm. So once you walk through the particular play, after a couple of times, right away, we're working it very efficiently.
Really? So it's that fast? You guys would do a play, you'd walk through it twice, and then basically you'd be doing it as pros.
Yeah, but some of them I would say to these guys, that play ain't gonna work. Who would go for that stupid play? And it worked. So, but it's all about practice and confidence and believing what you're doing is going to work.
So I'm amazed to learn that it's that fast. If you watched a high school team, do they do that too? Can they incorporate a new play that fast?
It's going to take you longer in high school because of lack of experience, talent, confidence, and practice.
So do you think that's the mark of a really, really practiced athlete, that you can switch something from sort of walkthrough mode to like it's totally internalized, I can just do it super fast?
That's why we get paid.
That must save a lot of time, though.
That's what I say. The professionals make it look easy, right? Whether it's entertainers or whatever it is, these guys shoot three-pointers, they make it look so easy. If you go out there, it's like, how do they do that?
But I'm hearing you say that for athletes at that level, it's not like the trainings all comes before that. You get to that level, and then you can switch modes in a second.
I would say 60% of the guys, 70%.
You're going to tell us which 60 or 70?
Some of the other guys where we see them, like Shaquille O'Neal, could never shoot free throws, Wilt Chamberlain, and they claim that they practice them, but they just don't have a knack for doing that. Some guys don't have a knack for shooting, the mid-range jumper, playing defense, but for other guys, it just comes very naturally.
Do you think that's a brain thing or a basic skill thing? Like some skill you don't have, or you think it's...
Well, I think you can acquire any skill if you practice.
So
it's more of a... Like I could take the average person in here and teach you how to shoot free throws, and you should be able to make 7 out of 10.
I wish you could teach me to do that. I'm not taking it up. I will never live it down with my kids.
Because you know why? I still do Walt Frazier basketball camps, and the kids are between the ages of 10 and 16. So I'm undefeated in the 10 to 11-year-old age group. You know? But I always play them one-on-one. Okay, check this. This is why I know confidence is the key factor. So I play the kids one-on-one, and not one kid beats me.
I gotta tell you, I'm defeated in the 9 and under categories.
No, you know why? Why? Because they don't think they can. You know, so they're calling their parents, telling them I played against Clyde, but they never thought that they could beat me, the greatest Nick ever. They don't think that they could.
Are you telling me that if they were more confident, they could,
So then
an
what
11-year-old who was more confident would beat you?
No, so then what I do is I let one of the kids win. You know, so we were playing like to 5 baskets. So usually the kids would get to 4 baskets, and then it would dawn on them they're about to beat me. They start choking. They start shooting the air balls. They dribble the ball off their foot. They just choke and they lose.
Yeah, let's talk about choking. What do you think choking is?
Choking is lack of confidence.
Do you I'm sure you've never had the experience of choking, but from watching other people choke, I mean, which I remember from my childhood you were really good at. For a neurobiologist who thinks about that, it's like the whole mode of the nervous system changes when people start to choke. That's sort of the standard story. You start to see stress hormones, heart rates change. You know, their whole biology turns over into this sort of fight or flight mode that it wasn't in before. When you were in the Knicks, you were kind of famous for doing stuff like that, and for making other people have that experience.
Right.
Did you do that? And what was that? What's the experience of making somebody else choke? How do you do that?
Because like you said, it's a mind thing. Like if I'm guarding you,
I'm already choking.
You see, I can tell from your mannerisms. Like if I get close to you and you start slapping my hand away, then I say, I got this guy. Because if you're slapping my hand away, you're not thinking about shooting. You're not thinking about dribbling. You know, I've taken away your focus. And that's what I try to do. So that's why if you ever saw me play, I kept a poker face. I never showed emotion, so guys could never say if they're all over me, it's affecting me. If they're not on me, it's affecting me. So they could never read my emotions. But most guys, you can see it in their demeanor.
So, okay, I want to chase that down. Here's a weird neuroscience fact. I have a friend who was asked by the US Navy if she could help pick the people who were going to be successful Navy SEALs during SEAL training. And so they spend a lot of money to train SEALs. They're incredible athletes, and the idea is it takes months and months, and most guys fail. And she concluded after a year of studying that it was all about not being able to control their emotions, not being able to keep from freaking out. That the guys who were going to make it as SEALs were the guys you could take one of those little horns, put it right next to their ear, honk it, and their heart rate wouldn't move. Do you think that's true of great athletes too, that ability? You certainly looked that way when you played.
I think it's an acquired skill, like you learn from grade school through high school. My background is I'm the oldest of 9 kids. I have 7 sisters and 1 brother. Oh my God. So I was always in charge. My mom, when my parents weren't around, my mom is telling you, Walt, you have to take care. I was always in a leadership role. So then when I go into sports, it's similar. I was always captain of the team, football, basketball. Even in sports, like in football, I'm the quarterback, so I'm in charge. In basketball, I'm the guard, I'm in charge. Baseball, I'm the catcher, I'm in charge. So I was kind of serendipitously always in these leadership kind of roles. So when things went awry, the coach would always pull me over and say, Walt, you got to do this, you got to do that. So I was accustomed to always playing that role. And that's how I got the poker face. When the coach gives me the confidence to go out, when I go out and talk to the guys, I'm like, shut up, I'm in charge. You know, like I'm doing this, and I had the respect of everybody that I played with.
So that's another interesting sort of biology fact, is that ability to just completely hold your cool under any circumstances is a hallmark of really high-ranking people in any environment. And that's true for animals too. It's true for gorillas. It's true for I study the decision-making of different groups of monkeys, and you can actually tell the ones who are super cool when they're little, they're going to grow up and be in charge. And
Well, I credit mine. If you grew up with 7 sisters, a mother, and a grandmother,
you don't think you were born that way?
you'll have a lot of patience.
Do you think that, so in corporate America, that's supposed to be true too? The guys who call the shots, the guys who are completely cool, that's supposed to be the idea, who grow up as sort of alpha personalities. So
Cool to me is focus.
Focus.
You see, because when you blow your cool, you're losing focus. So cool is you always under control. You know, like one time I was talking with Al Troutwig, and we were showing a highlight of John Starks. And he made this uncanny move. You know, Starks is like JR, make all these gyrating moves. And then he goes, "Clyde, did you ever make a shot like that?" I go, "No, I never had to." Meaning that I was never out of control, where I had to, do. So that's what I know, that focus is the key. Like, to me, I like pressure too. Like, the more the pressure, the more I concentrate. I mean, the crowd here, you guys gave us so much confidence, the Knicks fans. We were talking about choking. I'll never forget when the Willis Reed game, when Willis came out, I'll never forget, I saw Wilt Chamberlain, I saw Jerry West, and Elgin Baylor, 3 of the greatest players that ever played a game. They lost their focus. They stopped doing what they were doing, and they were staring at Willis when he came on the floor. And right away when I saw that, I said, we got these guys. It gave me so much confidence to see their leaders so concerned with what Willis Reed was going to do.
So let me ask a Rubin Museum question, which is, how do you practice, how do you get focus like that? Do you train to get focus like that? Other than with your grandmother and 6 sisters?
Well, it's like now, okay, for the Super Bowl, like all of these guys have gone through certain things to get them to this point. So every night when they're in their room, they have curfews. They're thinking about something in grade school, high school, college, something that catapulted them to be champions. So this is what they have to fall back on. You have that to fall back on. But they've been in big game scenarios before. You know, guys at Notre Dame, Michigan, 100,000 fans at Michigan. So they've been in this situation, and that helps to have the experience of being in a big time situation and having focus.
So a way to get focus is to reach inside to experiences that you've had, to think about how you got there, to retrace mentally some path you've been through it sounds like, of excellence.
Right. Whereas I would say a guy from a smaller college who didn't have 100,000 people at their games, or 60,000, and now coming into this Super Bowl scenario, is not as going to be as focused as a guy who's experienced this for 3 or 4 years, playing at a major level for a #1 team, being in the top 10, and having that pressure. Like, this is why in New York, everybody doesn't like to play in New York. The constant pressure, 24 hours pressure. It's never, people always want to know what you're doing and how you're doing it, and most guys don't like that type of scrutiny.
But we're all New Yorkers, so it's kind of cool for us.
But then
it's like the subway ride, right?
Right, we thrive on it. Like, New Yorkers think, you know, why could anyone live in Michigan? How could they live?
I hear you.
And people in Michigan said, how could you live in New York? You know, so everything is relative, pretty much. But I mean, guys like myself, like Joe Namath, like Reggie Jackson, you know, we could go down all the superstars that have thrived in New York. That's what we like. We like the pressure of the expectations of going out and becoming champions.
So do you feel like someone like you can convert that pressure to excellence and focus, and somebody who's maybe a little less experienced or maybe has a different brain or different mind converts it sounds like to fear, basically?
I think I could make them better. I don't know if they would reach superstardom, but I can improve on their game. I can make them more confident in different situations, what to do, what to think about. Like when I was in high school, and I was a quarterback, so I'm sitting on the training table and my coach is taping my ankles, and he's filling my mind with, he's telling me, well, Walt, today you should think about this, maybe you should try this play in a certain scenario. So then the game starts. And in a key moment of the game, I thought about what the coach said, and I called this particular play, and it worked like clockwork. So he became an extension. I became an extension of him on the field, but he planted that seed before the game while I was in the training room getting tape, and he's putting these thoughts in my mind. But that didn't make me execute it. Something else inside of me made that come out at a key time in the game that I was able to utilize it.
Okay, so I gotta pursue that story as a neurobiologist. Is there something special about that environment before the game or when you're getting your ankle taped that is a place where your mind's particularly receptive to capture ideas? I mean, there've got to be times when you're distracted, somebody says, I think you should do this play, and you're like, man, I can't even think about that right now.
Well, different guys, like Bill Bradley used to read a book before the game.
Really? That seems totally
Some guys sleep. Some guys like music. I don't like music. I like silence. I like to think with my thoughts. So I don't like to play loud music. But some guys, you see all the guys now, they all have the earphones on, even out on the field. You see, but I like to sit in silence and think about what I'm doing. Bill Bradley likes to read a book. Some guys like to sleep. So different guys have different ways to get psyched for the game.
Let me chase down habits for a minute, good habits and bad habits in athletes. So there's a lot of cool neurobiological studies of how people develop habits, and you could think about that as a habit like getting the hang of being able to dribble perfectly, or you could think about it as any move or action that you just repeat until it's just totally part of you. But the story has tended to be that it's really hard to break bad habits, that once something becomes habitized and it switches the part of the brain that's using it to these sort of automatic parts of your brain, getting the habit out of those parts of your brain is almost impossible. Is that true for athletes? Do you see people who've developed bad habits, and do they try and fail to break them, or are there tricks for breaking them?
The trick is discipline. That when you develop poor habits, then you work on eliminating them.
Just practice and discipline?
Just discipline,
That's
yeah.
so disappointing, I can't tell you. I was sure you were going to give me a really...
I mean, I work on discipline every day. That's one of the things that catapult me is my discipline. And the other thing I find, people don't work on their weaknesses. Nobody work on their weaknesses. Like, we talked about Shaquille O'Neal. For 12 years, he could never shoot free throws. Then other guys, other players that play, they can't make jump shots, or why this guy can't dribble, because primarily they don't practice. They don't work on their weaknesses. Like in the health club, everybody wants a six-pack, but that's the abdominal section is the least used section in the gym, because people come there after they've done everything else, and then they come and work on their stomach for 2 or 3 minutes. So I prioritize whatever my weakness is. If it's my stomach, I work on that first because I have the most energy. So if that's what I'm working on, I work on that diligently in my stomach, and then I go to other parts of my body. But I find the weakness with most people, what you were talking about, they do not work on their weaknesses.
So interesting. So, I mean, the latest neurobiology says that when we are born and develop, we've got like different parts of our brain. Everyone's are a little different. One part of your brain might be for different kinds of movements, for movements of your hand, movement of your shoulder, and that they're different in different people. You can actually look at their brains and say, like, this guy's really good with his hands, this guy's really good with his legs, this guy's really good with his... And the thing that we've learned in the last 10 years is that when you practice, you can actually change your brain in this way. And you can actually see people's brains changing. People who learn how... This is the most famous story is London cab drivers, which is really a horrible job, and you get lost all the time. And over 10 years, the parts of their brains that they navigate with, like, increase enormously in size. And they have these deviant brains where they've got these giant navigational brains. but other parts of their brains regress because you only have so much space in your head. And I think most people think that the thing you practice first and the thing you practice most gets bigger, and then the other parts of your brain, the parts that you're practicing with later or less, they can't get bigger because there's just no space for them. The parts of your brain that you were practicing with first were the ones that really were becoming dominant. And I think I hear you saying a really similar story, that you want to make that whatever parts of your body you need to make that, and brain you need to make that free throw, that's what you got to practice first. So then here's the question. For a neurobiologist, that would mean something else would get worse. You think that's true? That if Shaquille O'Neal had started practicing the thing he was really bad at, he would have had to give up some skill in one of the other areas?
No, the other areas you're more efficient in.
So you can do more with less once you get more efficient.
Right, you still hone those skills as well, but you work more. Like the other thing that I always do is if I'm practicing like by myself, if this were a gym, I come out, I'm dribbling, I assume that I'm in a game. So I simulate game conditions. Mm-hmm. So if I'm dribbling the ball, I'm assuming there's a guy there, so I protect the ball and I do that. So when you practice free throws, Shaquille O'Neal shoots 200 free throws, but he never chases the ball. Somebody else is running, he's standing on the line. During a game, you rarely go to the free throw line when you're not winded. So before I practice free throws, I run. And now I go to the free throw line and I practice them. If I miss the first one, I run again. So I put pressure on myself, just like in a game, to concentrate and make the free throw. So like I said, if I run like a half a sprint back and forth, I go to the line, I'm winded, I shoot the first one I miss, I do the same thing again. But if I make the first one, then I get a bonus. I keep shooting, so that's how I practice my free throws, just like I'm in a game. But the irony of the thing, like if you ever come to a Knick game and you watch before the game, all the Knick players out there shooting except Melo. Melo never shoots before the game. And he's the best shooter on the team, the best scorer on the team. And I was similar. I never like to waste all my shots in practice. I only warm up to a certain point and then I go and sit down. Because to me, the game is more mental at that point than physical. I mean, because we're all physically in shape to play the game, but to me it's a mental aspect where I know, okay, I'm ready to play. And then once I hear the Star Spangled Banner and I get the goosebumps, I'm ready to go. I'm psyched. So that's how I build up to the hoopla for the game. It's a slow transgression, like when I'm in the locker room. I tell the trainer, put my fur coat over there, man. I need more room to hang it over there. So, the whole thing, the first thing is how I come looking to the game. Like Clyde, I got to be nice and dressed, because when I look good, I feel good. So I get to the game now and I'm focused, I'm quiet, I don't like noise. And then in a warm-up, I only get to a certain point. But then once I hear the national anthem, I'm to the peak where I need to be to play the game.
That's awesome. That's a great story. So there's like a path for you, like a particular set of, I don't know, things that you go through that prepare you. If somebody messes with those, if they didn't play the national anthem, would it be hard to start?
Well, no, but they have to play.
I know that. If someone messes with your fur coat before they can.
I'm the star. He can't do that. He has to take care of that coat.
I think that's my answer, definitely.
But that's why playing on the road is different than playing at home. Because you're in a different environment. You can't always control your environment, because you're in a different bed, you're in a different hotel, you're in a different scenario. And like the Celtics used to play tricks when you go to Boston. The windows were high up like this ridge, so you needed a long pole to either open or close the windows. So two things are going to happen. Once it was going to be like 100 degrees in there, you need to open them, or it's going to be 0 degrees because you need to close them. So these were the mind games they play on you when you go into the locker room. It's going to be freezing or it's too hot. And then you can't find the guy with the pole. So for 5 or 10 minutes, Red Holtzman and the trainer are using only X-rated words. You can't even say what they. So now once you get that solved, then you can't find the towels. You know, they don't have the towel. So this is the transgression they send you to, try to get you all upset before the game.
It must work for some people. It must throw some people off.
Yeah, it does. If you lose the focus, you see a lot of people lose their focus. But it backfired on them in 1973. We were leading the Celtics 3-2. We played at the Garden and we lost. So everyone said it was over. We weren't going to win because Boston had never lost a 7-game series ever in Boston. But they put us in a little cubbyhole locker room. Like the tall guys had to literally bend over to walk around. And that we were so upset by that they would have the audacity to do that it galvanized our team. And I know we went out and played with more gusto than we would have.
Huh. That's a great story.
And there's the ring, folks.
So you really think that them messing with you really helped?
I know, because I know I was upset. And then talking to the other guys too, they felt the same way.
Do you think that emotion plays a real role in the way athletes perform?
Of course, emotion is everything. The Super Bowl, see, college is different. College is a lot more emotional than the professional because the coach can have you so psyched up, you run through this wall in college when you come out. The speeches, and that was one of the toughest transgressions I had to make from going to college to the pros. In the pros, they don't give you pep talks. You're getting paid, so they assume you're going to do your job or you won't be here, so their speeches are not fiery. They're just, Frazier, you got this guy, this is the play we're going to run, let's go.
So does that mean you have to supply the emotion?
You have to supply the emotion. Even the crowd is different. In college, bands are playing and the alumni are out there, everybody's rah-rah. You come out of the Garden, they're just sitting back, watching. So many times you got to psych yourself. That's what you have to learn to do.
But there must be like some razor's edge between staying cool, staying in control, staying focused, but finding the right emotion to balance it with.
Right. You can't peak too soon. But see, I learned that from experience. When I was home, I used to listen to all the rock music. I get to the game, I have nothing left. All of my adrenaline is gone. So that's why I learned what time to eat. Sometimes I used to eat too early. I'm like starving at halftime. I'm hungry. Or I'm too full. So these are the things that the Super Bowl guys were working with now, that they have to figure out for Sunday. But see, the guys that have been there, they already have this pattern. But the new guys, they don't. They think they have it, but they really don't know. The emotion, what's involved with getting psyched to play that type of game.
I mean, that's a place where people thinking about decision making have really changed. The view 20 years ago was that emotion's bad, and amongst corporate people or finance people or almost anybody who thought about decision making, emotion's bad. Stay away from it. And I think people don't believe that anymore. We know that there are really big parts of your brain where emotion helps, that it helps in all kinds of different ways. And I think everybody from the finance world on is realizing that there's this balancing act that you just described, I thought, really well, between finding the right emotion at the right time, and that having no emotion is not the right place to be. It's a bad place for efficient play and decision making. Okay, so now I want to ask, what about the emotions in the crowd? Because we know that the emotions of people around us can influence our emotions. And it must be really hard. I hadn't thought about this until you said that. I know that it's hard. It's supposed to be really hard to play when the crowd's against you. But it must be hard to find the right level if the crowd's too much for you too, right?
Well, see, I like playing on the road. Like, if you ever look at my stats, I actually play better on the road because I like a hostile environment. I like to shut them up. Whereas at home, everybody plays good because of the crowd. They're comfortable at home and they're cheering. But no one knows more about emotion than I do. Game 7, 1970. Willis Reed limps onto the court. Like I told you, I saw 3 of the greatest players in the world mesmerized by Willis coming on the court. But at that point, the crowd was so loud that we thought we could do anything.
So it wasn't too much. It didn't get you too excited.
It was exactly what we needed, because we were at a low point because our leader was hurting and we didn't know if he would play or not until he actually came on the floor. And then as fate would have it, he makes his first shot. And then he makes his second shot. And now the place is bedlam. You know, the crowd is in a frenzy. And I'm saying, this guy's been holding out on us. There's nothing wrong with him. So that set the tempo right there from Willis Reed making his first 2 shots, psyched the Lakers out. And then I would go on to have the greatest game in my career, 36 points, 19 assists, 7 rebounds, 4 steals. I sold hot dogs at halftime. And it was all because of the courage of Willis Reed coming out and the crowd making me believe at that point that I could do anything, and we did.
So it sounds like a good crowd is just always a good thing, no matter how crazy they are.
Well, that's why Madison Square Garden has the best fans. The New York fans are the most knowledgeable, the loudest fans in the world. So they're very catalytic. But right now, it's not happening because they haven't gotten behind these Knicks because they're so capricious in their style of play. You don't know which team is going to come out. But they always knew with us in the playoffs, like the person singing the national anthem could only get halfway through before the crowd they couldn't wait. You know, the crowd could not wait for the game. And that's when I got those goosebumps and I know I'm ready. You know, and I can't let Earl Monroe take that from me. I can't let Oscar Robertson. I can't let Jerry West. You know, I've got to get on these guys.
So I want to talk about negative emotions again for a minute. So, because you were so famous for this, basically for screwing with crowds, for taking the ball away from the person they wanted the ball to be in the hands of. Most professionals don't have that reaction, right? When the crowd's really ugly, that bugs some guys.
Right. But like I told you, my background, I was always in the leadership roles, always, when there was that pressure, the coach was telling me that, my parents were telling me, Walt, you got to do this, Walt, you have to take charge, you got to be in charge. So I was comfortable with that role.
So if one of the guys you're playing with is bugged, loses his cool, loses his focus, looks like he's panicking, getting afraid, crowd screaming at him, what did you say to him?
Well, Holtzman would say to Phil Jackson, don't dribble. He would tell him this before the game. Phil, you get the ball, don't dribble, give it to Clyde. Because he was one of those panicky guys. You didn't want Phil trying to do anything with the ball but get the rebound and give it to someone that could do something with it.
Can you, that was honest. Can you teach that to people? When you in basketball camp, can you teach, don't panic, don't be afraid, don't be moved?
Yeah, you can teach it, but maybe they won't get it. It's like with our kids. We all teach our kids. Try to do the right thing, but they don't always get it. I think a lot of things is timing. You know, sometimes it's too soon.
Too soon in life or too soon?
Too soon in life, they're not ready. People are not ready at that time. And then at another time, you tell somebody something, and there it is. It happens.
All right, well, let's go with that. Let's chase that for a minute. We know that the human brain has this really interesting pattern of development. We all develop at different rates, but there are critical periods when the brain is specifically receptive to learning some new skill or learning to see some new thing or make some new response. That's got to be a big feature of training a young athlete, knowing when's the right time for each thing. And it's got to be different for everybody, right?
See, but young athletes, they never get tired. Like the 10-year-olds will run all day. You know, the 16-year-olds, they hide when I want them to run. They don't want to run. But the younger kids, they love to run. That's what they want to do. Their attention span is very short. So when you're coaching them, you have to keep them active and running. That's what they want to do.
But you can't teach kids that age complex decisions and strategy and things like that, right? You're teaching them basic skills.
Today they teach them. I think it's overdone because you have kids now that play 80, 100 games, baseball, basketball, football. They train all year round. So I think it's too much. At 10, 11 years old, the focus to me should be participation. You know, like at my camps, I'll never forget one time at my camp, I saw a kid standing inside of a steel beam, just staring at the beam. So I go over to him, I go, "What are you doing?" He said, "I lost the game." I go, "Okay," so then after lunch, we all assemble. And I tell them no one person loses a game. You know, the team loses the game or the team wins the game. Not one person win the game. Michael Jordan can't win a game by himself. He has to have help. And what if I didn't do that for this kid? He would not have come back to the camp, might not have participated in sports again because of his confidence, and his teammates all shunned him saying, well, he lost the game. So that's why I think at a younger age, it should be just participation, like 9, 10, 11 years old. Shouldn't be on winning and losing, just participating. You know, building the skills that we were talking about and gaining the confidence. That's why the parents like for their kids to play soccer. Nobody scores. You know, they play for an hour, it's 0-0, nobody won the game. They got a good workout and everybody goes home happy.
So do you think the kids who are being overtrained today at 10 or 11, I mean, they've got to be changed by that permanently. Do you think they'll be worse athletes when they're older?
They burn out.
So yes.
Like one of my best buddies, his son played football and ran track throughout high school, college. So I was talking to him about going in the gym. He goes, "Man, I don't go near a gym anymore." He said, "I did that so much when I was playing that I don't want to go near a gym. I don't." So it causes burnout for them.
What do you think burnout is? I mean, I know sort of what it is, but what do you think happens
Overindulging in something where you lose interest, you don't want to participate in it anymore.
Can you get over it? Or is
No, people don't. My girlfriend, I also know a track runner from the Olympics. She won a gold medal. She never runs anywhere. And she'll tell you, "I hate running. I don't. And that was her claim to fame, was running.
So it's like some switch goes off basically in your head and that's the end of that.
Well, you look at a lot of my peers. They're all 30, 40, 50 pounds heavier than when they played. Because a lot of guys play, they're in shape because they have to be. See, I like being physically fit. I like working out. Part of that is my vanity as Clyde. You know, the way I look and my clothes and everything. It would be very expensive for me to gain weight. But I enjoy working out. I actually feel better. My food tastes better. Everything is better and I know it's not mental. It's real. It's real. It's a real feeling that I feel much better when I'm active. So I work out maybe 3 or 4 days a week. It helps me being around the Knicks players and seeing these young guys, right? So it helps me being around those guys and wanting to keep fit. And I mean, getting compliments from the public. "Oh, Clyde, you still look like you could play. Clyde, you do that." So it's kind of galvanizing. I think everybody likes to see their heroes looking good rather than kind of like over the hill and not what they were doing.
I'm sure that's true. Let me ask you about feedback, which we're kind of talking about here, how you reinforce a kid and how you don't reinforce a kid. I'm betting that I know the answer to this from all the things you've said to me, but when you're a pro, do you not need reinforcement like that anymore? Do you do all your own reinforcement? Or does a team still reinforce its members? Or is there a way to, make you stronger?
That's the key to being a good coach. You have 12 different personalities, so how do you motivate each personality? Like, you don't have to motivate me, I am self-motivated. Like, Holtzman would always yell at me because I was impervious to his yelling. But he can't yell at Bill Bradley. Bradley would play worse. So he's got to call Bill over and talk to him. That's how he motivated Bill. So everybody has a different way of motivating. It's the same way with people in business. And, getting your employees to reach their potential, the same thing. You can't treat everybody the same. I mean, you can have the same rule. Holtzman had the same rule for everybody, from Frazier to the last guy on the team. And players respected that because there were only one set of rules. I didn't get privileges that they didn't have. But he can't treat everybody, he didn't treat everybody the same.
So when you're training 10, 11, 12-year-olds, do you look for what each kid needs? Is that part of, at that stage too?
Yeah, it's critical. Some kids are hungry. They didn't eat last night. You know what I mean? Some kids heard gunshots. Some kids so they're all from different backgrounds, and how you have to deal with them. Because from a kid from the ghetto is different from a kid from a prominent family. Mm-hmm. So this is what you have to know in order to reach these kids and talk to them. Like the kid that was looking at this steel thing, I didn't reprimand him. I did it in front of everybody so that he would feel better that he didn't really lose the game. It was a team effort. So he went on to become, a good kid in the camp and very active. So, and the most prominent thing for me is I always run into guys later in life, like at my restaurant, Clyde's Wine and Dine. One night there were like 15 guys there from Wall Street. So the one guy came up to me and said, "Clyde, you won't remember this, but when we were kids, you used to drive your Rolls Royce and let us look in your car and you would talk to us." And essentially he was saying, that's why I'm here, man. When you were a star, you took time to talk to me. So, I really appreciated that.
The motivation thing is so important, and it's something I think people like you have a good intuitive feel for it, but I think we don't really understand the neurobiology of that at all. I mean, when we study how people learn, I think we tend to make general rules for everyone. And right. I hear you more and more saying that's probably a mistake, that people like me should be thinking more about rules one at a time, one person at a time, one brain at a time.
Right, because everybody learns at a different way. I have twin sisters. One was smart naturally. The other one had to work at it.
Okay, I'm going to take that back to my lab tomorrow, I'll have to tell you.
Yeah, it's like with shooting. Like these things came easy to me. The defense, the dribbling, the shooting. Someone else, it takes a little more time to accomplish those skills. But like I say, everyone can improve. Like I used to tell my son, he's an Ivy Leaguer, but that guy couldn't paint the wall. He couldn't do anything, man. He grabbed the broom by the wrong end, man. And I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, if you're intelligent, then you should be able to do anything. Right? If you're an intelligent person, you should be able to do anything. And if you did this for a week, you should be better the following week than you were this week. Right?
Okay, fair.
Right. So you should show improvement. That's the same thing with anything. Whether you're dealing with sports or studying or whatever it is you're trying to do, you should see improvement. Confidence is a gradual thing. It's not instantaneous. But if you want to get better at something you don't know, read. Read about it. Read it from the experts. When I first got into broadcasting, I was intimidated because I thought I'd start talking and I wouldn't be able to shut up. So right away, I knew I had to improve my vocabulary. So vocabulary was something we all know about, but so I had to work diligently on that. I used to get the Sunday Times, the arts and leisure section, when they critique the plays, riveting, mesmerizing, provocative, profound, dazzling. So I like the way these words sound. So I have books and books of words and phrases. People think I'm a voracious reader. I never read anything. I just read my words and phrases, but I'm always listening for new words. And I found I write things down. I don't use a computer. My retention span is better when I write something down. I can really retain it. So, and I've started on radio before I was on TV. So I always had my dictionary with me, my books. I used to even record the games. When we're on the road, I'm listening to the games, how I can improve and not be redundant and using the same words. When I first started, people criticized me. Like, why is this guy using these big words? Why is he doing that? And, you know, saying that I didn't really know the game because all I was doing was rhyming. And so, you see, so now, in the beginning, I didn't have the confidence to say those words, but I practiced them. Even today, when I'm watching a game, I turn down the sound, guys. So if you ever turn down the sound on the TV, you have to be more attentive because no one is talking to you. So things you've heard me say on the air, I've said thousands of times in my bedroom. Watching the games, you know, passes high and awry. People used to think I said, I don't choreograph the game, man. I don't have anything in front of me. But I have a phrase for everything, or 2 or 3, like the pass is high, awry, this and that, you know, dazzling, mesmerizing, whatever they're doing. I learned things in 3s, and that's how I used to do them. So I had the spontaneity, the continuity, you know, everything that was going on that with words, because the other thing is, being in New York, the fans put pressure on you because I was away from the game and then I came back to the game. I was saying fast break and they were saying transition. You know, and I was saying passing and they were saying dishing. And like I said, I have a lot of, I'm saying if this is my job, then you shouldn't be better than me at my job, man. You know, like the fans are saying versatility and physicality. You know, that's an average New York fan. If you talk to them, this is how they're talking, man. I go, man, I have to work at this. You know, originally Nick gave me the job because I'm Walt Frazier, but that wasn't enough for me. I want to be the best or whatever I try. Like as a basketball player, I work diligently to get to the pinnacle of that. So same thing now as a broadcaster. I'm always trying to do the perfect game, which is impossible. But that's how I used to study over and over and over and practicing and practices. And now I have a new hobby, is words. I love words and phrases. Phil went through quite a metamorphosis, man. He did. You know, I was the first round draft choice in 1967. He was second round. So we were roommates and all of that. He was a hippie. You know, he had the beard and the long hair, and we thought he'd be in Woodstock now somewhere rather than being one of the greatest coaches ever. But when I see him, his coaching philosophy is just like Red Holtzman. He's a player's coach. Guys can have an impact on what they do. And so his life really evolved. And I know it's because, you know, he's a family man. He has kids. He honed his skills in at that time, the CBA in Albany. He used to coach teams there. He went to the Bulls, and then he finally got his chance to show what he could do as a coach. And that's the mental aspect that we were talking about. So he definitely went through a change, mentally and physically, to become one of the greatest coaches of all time. A lot of it is lack of versatility. They're one-dimensional. Like some guys are just shooters. And when you're the starter team, you're like Melo. You can shoot 25 times a game. But now you come into the pros, you're not the best player. You're not getting 25 shots. What else do? You know, you're not a good rebounder. You don't play defense. So your chances are limited of making the team. And that's what happened to a lot of guys that you see that are thriving in college. They're very good college players. But, you know, look at Bill Bradley. He dominated college, and he could barely get a shot off in the pros. You know, because so it's like a different game. The size of the players now, like a lot of guys in college, they are playing out of position. So like today, to play the shooting guard, you got to be almost 6'7". You know, when I played in the 70s at 6'4", I was a tall guy. Now I'm a shrimp. I'm like a point guard today in the NBA. So, but versatility helps you if you can do more than one thing. Well, for me, it was age. You know, once I got a certain age, the skills seemed to start to diminish. You know, I was still a good player, but not a great player. So it's devastating when that starts to happen to you. I still worked just as diligently. I did all the same things that I alluded to, but the results were different. So this is what happens to some of the players later on. Some players it happens more because the average lifespan today of a professional player is only 3 or 4 years. So there's a big turnover. And then, of course, you get the superstars, guys who play 12 to 15 years. Those skills don't diminish as quickly.
The story we often tell is that flexible intelligence really diminishes after 35. And then it just shows this steady plummet through your 80s. But what's called crystallized intelligence, the stuff that you've learned in your life, the stuff that you've become really excellent at, the habits that you've acquired and stabilized, those actually tend to improve. And so you might think of, I mean, as a biologist, I like to think of people as shifting from generalists to specialists over the lifespan. So in the beginning, you kind of can do everything a little bit. And then most of your abilities start to deteriorate as you get a little older. And the thing you're really specialized at, that continues to improve. And so that's not to say that people, you know, as old as me, have no abilities, but if they're really the things that they've specialized in. Now, the question of how you make this abrupt shift, you know, the biologist in me thinks that when you see that really happen suddenly, it's either a real crisis or it's a biological event. And we're beginning to recognize that when we see really sudden, startling changes, that you can often chase out a biological cause.
In 1975, I had a bad back. And I go to the doctors and they tell me it's normal because I've been playing sports a long time. So I knew a guy at a health food store, Indian guy, and I told him my problem. So he sent me to this guru that I started practicing yoga. I would go to the guy and do stretches, and all of a sudden my back was better. And so I used to tell people, yeah, I do yoga. They go, yogurt? In 1973, no one had heard of yoga, man. Especially athletics. Like I was using chiropractors back in the 70s when they said they were quacks. So I used to read all these books. I always had this health and fitness thing. So I used to, like I was telling you about reading, if you don't know something, go to the source. So I read so many books on health and fitness and diet and exercise. So somehow I got led to the yoga, and I do some form of yoga every day. You know, I no longer go to classes or anything, but just in bed, or especially when I'm on the road, because traveling, you have your neck is always sore, so I do the different asanas for stretching. But it's not a mass movement. It's not for everybody. It's just a select, esoteric group of people that will get into yoga. You know, like now they have the hot yoga, we're talking about the one that's been around for 2,000 years. You know, the different stretches. And with that, most people that are into that don't smoke, don't drink. They have a proper diet. They're cool. They're laid back. They're focused. It's an enlightenment about a person that follows yoga.